my view that the policy of His Majesty's government is anti-Semitic and in result will prove a rallying ground for anti-Semites in every country in the world. Time and time again, the media will pounce on any opportunity to trigger alarm bells and generate a new wave of propaganda against Muslims, of genocidal ambitions towards Jews, and to claim that Islam is inherently anti-Semitic. Responding to this feeble charge against us is not really a question of appeasement or to act apologetically, particularly at a time when Palestine is occupied, at a time when Al-Aqsa is still desecrated and besieged. There is no mood to appease anyone. It's more a question of dissipating the deliberate fog created to obscure the world's vision from the actual issues at hand. Dhulm, injustice, arrogance, theft, tyranny. But before I get into this, let us first ask the question, do the concoctors of this simplistic claim against the Muslims that they are apparently ultimately driven by Jew hatred actually believe it themselves? Surely they know when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ saw the funeral procession of a Jew passing by, he stood up out of respect for human life when an innocent Jewish man was framed for a crime that he didn't commit. 11 verses of the Quran were revealed to exonerate him. Even when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, his armor was mortgaged to a Jewish man, showing that he maintained good relations with Jews in Medina up until his death. They also know that when King Ferdinand of Aragon and Queen Isabella of Castile conquered Spain from the Muslims in 1492, it also marked the end of Muslim protection of Jews. What was once a place where Jewry had flourished, marking the Jewish Golden Age, all Jews were now ordered to either change their religion or leave the country in 6 months, according to the Alhambra enactment issued against the Jews. They also remember how the Inquisition courts that were established and where thousands of Muslims and Jews were executed. And as a result, Bayezid II sent ships to Spanish ports from the Ottoman provinces to Spain to deliver 100 to 200,000 Jews from Christian Spanish Inquisition. Within a short period of time, they had found a new home in the Muslim lands, and they called upon the Jews of the world to join them there. They also know, fast forwarding to World War II, that it was the Grand Mosque in Paris that rescued Jews fleeing the Nazis and provided them with a safe haven and a means of escape. A chapter in our history that repeated itself, history that we are proud of. See, had we been these anti-Semitic simpletons as they deceitfully portray us, or had we had a history of persecuting the Jews like the West did, Muslims couldn't hide this aspect of history for the simple reason that within a century of the death of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in 632, Muslim armies had effectively conquered almost the entire world where Jews lived, from Spain eastward, across North Africa, Middle East, as far as the eastern frontier of Iran and beyond. Almost all of the Jews in the world were now ruled by Islam. What happened instead was, as mentioned by the Jewish Chronicle, that this new situation transformed Jewish existence. Their fortunes changed in legal, demographic, social, religious, political, geographical, economic, linguistic, and cultural terms, all for the better. And it adds that when Muslim Arabic culture thrived, so did that of the Jews. And when the Muslim Arabic culture declined, so did that of the Jews. Had we been anti-Semitic simpletons, as they deceitfully portray us, then Jews all around the world who live in Muslim lands today would have suffered the ramifications of the crimes of the Israeli entity of today. But in reality, as was mentioned by Al-Hanan Beck, an Orthodox Jewish rabbi, that despite 75 years of killing in Israel, Jews, he said, continue to live in the Muslim world, in Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Iran, Turkey, Yemen, enjoying, in his words, a beautiful life there. So how can this charge of anti-Semitism be on us Muslims when our Quran is in Arabic, Semitic language? Our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, an Arab, is a Semite. Palestinians are Semites. Part of the media strategy, however, is to simplify all of this to a matter of Jew hatred, anti-Semitism, to paint us as barbarians, to desperately Nazify the Palestinians in order to distract the world from the core matter: ethnic cleansing, stolen land, mass killing, incarceration, double standards in applying international law, Al-Aqsa Mosque desecration, occupation, years of injustice. So far from being a conflict against the Jews, it is fundamentally a war of justice against injustice, regardless of the religious affiliations of the latter. Moreover, these accusations are typically thrown at Muslims precisely because it reflects the history and the mindset of many of the accusers themselves. In many occasions, it's the same groups who throw these labels at us, who deemed the Africans subhuman, who annihilated the Native Americans, who obliterated entire Japanese populations in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, who rained napalm on civilian villages in Vietnam. The same groups who glorify blood sports today, whether it's in the enduring Spanish practice of pitting a bull against a man till death, or the ancient practices of Rome within the Colosseum, where gladiators, often slaves or convicts or prisoners, were pitted against each other, and a range of wild beasts like lions, tigers, wolves, bears, leopards, wild boars, elephants, hyenas, buffaloes, hippos, crocodiles, giraffes. It is estimated that around 400,000 people perished in that arena, and the Colosseum has been implicated in the extinction of certain animal species from the surrounding areas. As for today, it is many of these exact same groups who unabashedly back the Zionist project, plotting, effectively, a final solution against the Palestinian people. The irony of it all is that whilst they're quick to drop on us the label of anti-Semitism, there is nothing more anti-Semitic than Zionism itself. Lord Balfour is hailed as the Zionist hero for advocating the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. In reality, he was no friend of the Jews. The arrival of Jewish refugees in the UK and US fleeing persecution in the Russian Empire led to a rise in anti-immigration sentiments and explicit anti-Semitism here in Britain. Britain clamored for stricter immigration controls, and Balfour, who, aligning with public sentiment, was instrumental in passing the Aliens Act while he was Prime Minister. This law was the first of its kind to restrict immigration into Britain and was primarily aimed at curbing the influx of Jewish immigrants from the Russian Empire. During the early 20th century, Western liberal nations, including Britain, grappled with integrating Jewish communities. Zionism presented a solution that aligned with Balfour's ethno-nationalist vision, offering separation instead of integration. Therefore, Balfour's endorsement of Zionism can be viewed largely as motivated by his preference to shield Britain from what he perceived as the miseries of Jewish integration, and a preference for exporting the problem or ceasing to import it, rather than safeguarding the rights of a minority group within the nation. And that is why you have Edwin Samuel Montagu, who was the only Jewish member of the cabinet headed by David Lloyd George, to which Balfour belonged, and only the third Jewish minister in British history. Here is how he commented on the draft of the Balfour letter when he received it in August 1917. He said, "I wish to place on record my view that the policy of His Majesty's government is anti-Semitic and in result will prove a rallying ground for anti-Semites in every country in the world." You see, the only tactic left in the Zionist playbook today is to spin a web of lies against Muslims and to craft propaganda so outrageous that only the most naive and sheltered could believe. But this deceit is wearing thin and becoming increasingly untenable both at home and abroad. The Western public are not going to accept this much longer, neither is anyone else.